Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Elena Frigenti from Frankie, New York. So, welcome, Elena. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Bye. Hi, Bob. And hi, everyone.
Uh, and I love your T-shirt. So,
Thank you. Thank you. It's a brand one. Brand one.
I want to talk about Frankie a lot, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about where you're from and your family and your husband's family.
Yeah. I was born in Livorno, Tuscany. Livorno is a small coastal town, about 100 kilometers from Florence. And my family, though, is not completely Tuscan because my father was from San Valentino Torio, which is a small town in province of Salerno, Campania. And my mother was born in Livorno as well, but her father was from Apulia. And my maternal grandfather was from Barletta in province of Bari. And so I can say that three-quarters of my blood are not Tuscan. No, so I'm a girl from the south of Italy, yeah.
Ah, so
And
that
my
so
husband, and my husband was born in Florence, but as me, his parents were not from Tuscany because they were born in Apulia, both of them. They came from Taranto, and so yes, he is another son of migrants.
so that's interesting. I didn't know that because my mom's family they're from Torito in
Mm,
Bari.
yeah.
And they were, farmers, and the men were farmers, the women were seamstresses. And as I was doing the research, when I think I finally came across somebody in the early 1800s who was like a forest ranger or something, I was wow, somebody did something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now my uncle lived there. My grandparents' oldest son, they left him behind when they came in
Oh,
1915 with his grandparents. And he didn't come until like 1950 to Canada. So all my cousins from my Uncle John, Uncle Giovanni, they were all born in Torito.
yeah. Yeah, that was also, I think, a typical thing to do for families. The grown-ups went first, just in advance, just to break the ground, and then the rest of the family would follow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard two stories, but the one that makes the most sense to me is that they had planned to go back. My my grandfather was in he fought in the Libyan War
Hmm.
before World War One.
Yes.
And when World War One was breaking out, my grandmother said, "You already went to war. You're not going again." And I think it was my grandfather's brother was here. And I don't know if you know this, but for some strange reason, the Barres men, when they came to America, were all icemen, delivered ice.
Yeah.
I can't. Nobody knows why, but that's what they did.
They were very useful back then because people didn't have refrigerators at home, and so the Heisman were, I mean, kind of uh, so useful people to have around the house. Yeah.
Yeah, and my uncles told me that they had the big tongs, whatever you call them, and they would go up, 5 flights of stairs with
Yeah.
the ice on on their back.
My mother used to tell me that she remembers, she still remembers when the Iceman came to their house carrying this big load of ice, and they put it in a sort of I mean I don't know how to a cupboard, something like that, and to store all the food and the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I still remember growing up in New York when we still had the fruit and vegetable man. He didn't have the horse. The horse was gone by then, but they would still drive around in the truck in the early 1950s and
Yeah.
1960s, and again, the typical vegetable man was an Italian accent and everything, and that's just the way it was. So I want to ask you another thing about Italians and genealogy research. We here, especially me and a lot of people like me, we like to dive deep into our history because we want to connect. But I get the impression that the Italian people don't do that so much.
No,
And
no, we don't. No, we don't. They don't. No, yeah, because maybe Italians are not so linked to this idea of being in a melting pot, because basically Italy is not a melting pot country as the United States are. And so they don't feel usually the need to going back and research the origins of their families. Well, now and then we ask to our, grandparents what was like if they move from some place to another one, but there is not this huge this urgency for finding our roots, even because actually because the, there has been a flux of migration in Italy as well, a domestic migration, because from the south, as my families both did, they migrated to the north, Tuscany or whatever upper north. But there is not such a thing like here. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and
it's a pity, I think.
yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of it now. I mean, I have, my uh, fourth cousin, Jincia, who's been helping me a lot. And she, probably a rarity, she did a Facebook page to see if she could find anybody from Spain or South America with the name Piramalo, because the family originally came from Spain. She never expected to find anybody in the U.S. And in fact, there were only two that came to the U.S. My maternal grandmother, her and her aunt, uh, and everybody else, because they had money and they saw no need to come. They were the aristocrats in Naples, and I could only guess that my grandmother came because her aunt was here, and being a woman, of course, she wouldn't inherit anything or get anything. So I think what happened was that possibly her aunt's husband, who was an entrepreneur, started my grandfather in a business in New York City. You can see the shop behind me.
Yeah.
That's his shop.
Oh yes,
And
yes.
in the
Yeah.
1920s in New York City. And it was an embroidery, bridal veils and crowns. And what I learned recently from my cousin from that family was that her great grandfather, the entrepreneur, had either a shoe or a wallet factory, but something to do with leather in New York City. So the only thing I could piece together is somehow he must have said, "Come, and I'll set you up in business."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And they lived on 14th and 15th Streets in Manhattan
Oh yeah.
when they first came.
Downtown. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
Uh,
it's fascinating. I think that Italians are losing something, not trying to bring together all the pieces of the past, because anyone has a story behind them. So yeah.
yeah, and you kind of get the feeling of who you are,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely, absolutely.
Uh, and every time I find somebody in my history going back 300 or 400 years that was some sort of despot or something like that, my wife says, that's where you get it from. Now I understand. So I want to talk to you about Frankie in New York. What exactly is Frankie in New York?
The mysterious thing. It's a non-profit. It's an organization we founded almost 3 years ago, when shortly after moving here from the States, from Italy, because we are fascinated by the Italian Americans, and we also have the feeling that Italians and Italian Americans are not so much related as they should and they could. Because despite the common roots, the common background, there's no such a deep bond between the two communities. And so we want to deepen these bonds because they are huge and they are meaningful. And also we want to tell the stories of the Italian Americans far from the stereotypes, because another thing that we don't like is seeing that so often Italian Americans are just the framed in a cliche, like the Sopranos or the Paisa or something like that. And it's not true, because Italian Americans are, amazing, because they mix the Italian, typical Italian caring for the details, but also the big vision that comes from being Americans. And so this mix is absolutely stunning to us. And to us it's also important to tell the stories of this kind of people, this kind of third breed of people, and so that's why we founded the organization. And so we tell the stories pretty much every day on our social media. We have the website, which is more or less a showcase of what we do, and we have the monthly newsletter, which each month focuses on a topic which could be of interest for the community. And also now we are working on a big project, which is the Who's Who of the Italian Americans, a sort of directory to collect in alphabetical order the biographies of as many Italian Americans as possible. Uh, just short bios to tell their story, from where they come, their family story, and so on.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and it's sad because it's becoming more and more watered down with every past generation. When I was growing up, of course, all four of my grandparents, spoke Italian. That was their natural language. Um, my mom's dad and my dad's mother, they spoke very little English. I mean, they spoke it, but not a lot, and they would drift into Italian a lot. So we grew up hearing the language and going to the bakery or going to the pork store and all of that, and walking down my grandmother's block. If there were two non-Italians, that was a lot. But things progress and people drift. My cousins, while at one time we were all within a few square miles of each other, now we're hundreds or even thousands of miles apart. And to your point, that's all getting lost with the younger Italian Americans.
Yeah.
That they don't have the big family dinner, for example, anymore. Like we had.
No, because times have also changed. People are always rushing from one place to another, so it's more difficult. But also, I think we as a society, we have in a kind a way we have lost these traditions, and so in a way it's a bit sad. So restoring the memory, restoring the origins, the roots is it's a meaningful process to us, and that's basically our mission. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. And I know we've talked, on other calls about it, about trying to get the young people involved and
Yes.
doing something
Yes.
with that.
Yeah.
What do you see as? Let me ask you a different way. How do you characterize um, an Italian who, like yourself, who's born, grew up in Italy, comes to New York? When you talk to an Italian American, where do you see the connection, and where do you see something we've missed?
Well, a big connection is this love for Italy, which in a way you as Italian Americans have much deeper than us as Italian Italians, because actually Italians, I mean, have this sort of link to their homeland, home country, but it's not like Italian Americans have. It's more something like that, something that awakes when there is the football game or something like that. But this deep love to Italy, as it was a person from the family, we as Italians don't have. And I love this sort of feeling that you guys have, because it always helps me reconnect more deeply with my origins. And so this is for sure one big link between me as an Italian and you as Italian Americans. And maybe one well, difference, maybe it's related to what I was saying before, because Italian Americans being this kind of mixture between the two cultures. I feel the difference because though we are both Italians, because we are Italians, but you are something more than in a way that I do, because this being American in the bone doesn't belong to me, and this is maybe is the difference, but it's a difference that I love, because I would love to have, in a way I'm learning to have this big vision, and this vision of the future of what things can become, that we as Italians don't have. We are not able to look so much beyond. No.
Yeah, yeah, no, I see what you mean. And for us, I mean, when we went the the one time we did get there, you and I've talked to other people, we feel like we missed something. When we go back to Italy, like I went there and I looked around and I saw the faces of the people and I said, these are my people.
Yeah.
When you walk around America, like you said, it's a melting pot. So,
Yeah.
there's Asian people and black people and Spanish people, so the streets are different. When you go there, everybody looks like you. And of course we recognize the food and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I mean, I'm trying to learn Italian, but I mean, you don't need to know Italian to eat, because everything's, what everything is when you look at the menu. That's the one thing we could get by with. We could always eat. My wife said, you love it here, don't you? And I said, yeah, because I feel this connection, this deep connection to the place. And it's strange because why do you have that connection, when you go back to a place? And I'm sure maybe when Irish people go to Ireland and German people go to Germany, they probably feel the same way.
Yes,
Um,
I believe so. Yes, it's something that you can't explain in a rational way. It's something more emotional. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, growing up and hearing the language and hearing the people speak, it's it's fascinating. And then walking through Sorrento and seeing the Sorrentino butcher shop, or there was another this is the funniest one. You'll like this story. I think I've told it a couple of times on the podcast, but in Sorrento there's the Circolo Sorrentino, right in the main square. You know it, right? So it was, I think, early Sunday morning. Nobody was in the place, basically. And I walked up to, I guess he was a waiter or something. And I said, "Can I come in and take a picture? I just want to, take a picture." And he said, "No, you can't." And he spoke English. So I said, "Well, my name's Sorrentino, and I just want to get a, picture inside. It'll be fine." He said, "No, you can't." So after 3 tries, he just, went like that with his head, and there were the 4 guys in the corner with the cigars and the fedoras. I said, "Okay, I understand now." So I had to be happy with the picture out in front of the place. And probably any other time, they probably would have let me go in there and take the picture. But that particular time, but even there, I was walking around, and we were going to, there was like, I guess, an open air flea market, and we walked past the house with this garden, and there was an old Italian woman there, that a heavy woman like my grandmother, surrounded by tomatoes. I mean, bushels and bushels and bushels of tomatoes. And she was just sitting there peeling them with a big smile on her face.
Yeah.
So, all right. So food, because I like to cook. I went to restaurant school in New York City, and so I have to ask you, because we think we eat Italian food, and what's the biggest differences between Italian food in Italy and Italian food here?
Maybe you guys mix too much in just one plate. Because, for instance, spaghetti meatballs. Actually, in Italy, we eat spaghetti and then we eat meatballs because it's the first course and the second course. And so this is because the main difference that I noticed here is that, and this reflects your being Americans as well, is that you tend to put in the same plate all the different parts of a meal, and because it's just the way you usually do, and so and each separately taken, they are each originally Italian meals, because spaghetti is spaghetti and curry is Italian, and also the meatballs. And so just this is one of the examples that comes to my mind. But yes, and also this kind of mixing ingredients, like chicken parmigiano, for instance, which is not Italian, as a traditional recipe. But I also know that back in the days, people who had to cook didn't find all the ingredients they need in order to cook the recipe in the traditional way, and so they try to invent something with what they had at hand. And so as we Italians are very creative, so all these kind of Italian American recipes were born. But I like them. I like to try everything.
And I keep telling Jincy, I said, you have to give me all the recipes. I have a couple from my dad's mother, and one that's very interesting is she would make like a veal braciole with but with an onion sauce. Now she's from Naples, and I have to just, again, I can't ask anybody. Apparently this was my father's favorite dish. It's really, really good. Um, but you would never find that in an Italian restaurant. So again, to your point, I don't know if it's something she brought from there because it was from her family and maybe just, a family recipe. But
Yeah.
you would never find that in an Italian restaurant, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing that freaks people out is I have her recipe for tomato sauce. And at the very end, she added butter to the sauce. Now, people go ballistic when I posted this thing that my grandmother put butter in, and they said she can't be Italian. And I said no, she was from Naples. I said she definitely, and celery, and she would put celery in. So again, I don't know if it's because it was here and maybe they used something else to sweeten up the sauce in Italy, and celery here was common, and they did that.
Well,
Um,
for the tomato sauce, there is actually a mixed tradition because in some part of Italy, some parts of Italy, they add sugar to the sauce in
yes.
order to sweeten it.
Hmm.
So maybe the butter, the reason for adding butter is to sweeten it. And also, that makes me think that in northern Italy, butter is a much common ingredient, and so maybe it's not that unusual to find tomato sauce with butter also in Italy too. So I wouldn't be so.
And the interesting, I tell people, I say, look, don't before you go ballistic, just try it because what it does do is it makes the sauce richer. It gives it
Yeah.
it gives it a shine and it makes it richer. And it's not like you put a pound of butter in there. You put a couple little pieces in there and stir it around. Um, but yeah, but to your point, I don't know whether these couple of dishes that she had, whether it was just because that's what they had here.
Yeah.
Um, I have to think that veal dish probably comes from her family going way back, and maybe it was just that maybe it was just her family that made that.
Yeah, yeah, maybe a family variation of the, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Because I do that stuff all the time. I'll look at it and I say, oh,
and
well, I don't have this around, so I'll throw that in there.
no, and it also makes me remember that there is a recipe that comes from the northern Italy in Veneto, where onions are very often used to cook the meat. And so, for instance, there is the liver, which is cooked in an on an onion base, so that becomes a sort of sauce during the cooking.
Hmm.
So it's not that, unusual again. So
And then that's the other interesting thing about it is, and we're going to get a flavor of that once we finally get there. But each region has its own cuisine over there. Unlike here it's Italian food. There, every region has its own
yes,
specialties, right?
yeah, absolutely. Because actually, we can't talk about an Italian cuisine because it doesn't exist.
Doesn't
As,
exist, right?
as Italy didn't exist as a nation until 1861. Yes, it has developed all these regional cuisines that sometimes are similar, sometimes completely differ from each other. So, for instance, even in Sicily, there is an amazing mix of many kinds of cuisines because there are the Arabs, there are the French, the Greeks, and so yeah. So it's
Yeah.
a trip every time it's a trip.
So do you cook American food or you cook Italian food at home?
Well, I try to buy Italian food. Yeah. But as I said, I like to try new things. So, but not the pineapple on the pizza.
Oh no.
No, this is absolutely unacceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, I like my pizza plain, maybe a little pepperoni or something on it, but that's
Yeah,
about it. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
like that.
No, no, no. The pineapple is it's a totally
Yeah, that's too funny. We're lucky. We have an Italian bakery 3 or 4 blocks from here. You know, and they have all the old goodies and everything like that. And yeah, it's fantastic to have it that close. So what do people do if they want to participate with Frankie in New York?
You can go to the website, which is www.frankienewyork, spell just like it is, .com, or follow us on the social media, or also through the website, sign up to our monthly newsletter. And for the project of the Who's Who of the Italian Americans, just stay tuned because it's a work in progress. So as soon as we have some details, we'll spread the word on our platforms.
No, that's great. That's very exciting. And, you know, I advise everybody to look into it because besides that, like I said, we want to get we want to get the youth involved in this so we don't lose that connection that people of my generation have. Because I think it's very, very important that
Yes,
we
it
don't
is.
lose that identity.
And I also think that the younger ones are also in a way eager to get reconnected with their roots, because maybe they too feel they are losing something
Hmm. Yeah.
along the way, and so yeah. But we have to reimagine the narrative because as soon as we use the usual narrative, they won't follow us. But with a new pop kind of narrative, yes, maybe they will they will be with us.
Yeah. No, let's hope so. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the
Thank
time.
you, thank you for having me again. Yes,
Oh, anytime, anytime.
ciao, ciao a tutti.
Bye.